In addition to being National Veterans and Military Families Month, November is also National Homelessness Awareness Month, and sadly, the two are related. Even after Congress expanded eligibility for HUD's Veterans Housing Vouchers in 2020, veterans comprise 11% of the US homeless population, and nearly 40,000 veterans find themselves without shelter on any given night. Let that sink in for a moment. As you heard from the previous panel, homelessness in turn limits veterans' access to other vital services, and of course, it adversely impacts their health and wellness. Well, today I had the privilege of moderating a panel on veteran homelessness, and we are very fortunate to have with us three experts on the subject. John Keown is the National Director of Supportive Services for Veterans Families Program at the Department of Veterans Affairs. He's been involved in veterans homeless projects for many, many years, and he was the author of Virginia's Challenge Report, which provided a community assessment of the needs of homeless veterans. We're also joined by Richard Preble, who's a staff attorney with the Legal Aid of Southeastern Pennsylvania, where he works on the Veterans Advocacy Project, which is a program he helped establish last year. Prior to that, he worked as an Equal Justice Works Fellow at the Military Assistance Project in Philadelphia. And finally, we have Jill Williams, who is a Coast Guard veteran and a board member of the Homeless Persons Representation Project, which serves people in Baltimore, Maryland. She's been involved in many projects over the years advocating on behalf of low-income clients and veterans. And Jill, if it's okay, I'd like to start with you. I gather that you have lived experience with homelessness, which you now leverage to advocate on behalf, for better services for veterans. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience as a homeless person and how you were able to find housing and how this has impacted your advocacy?
My name is Jill Williams. I am 63 years old. I am also an honorably discharged veteran of the United States Coast Guard, where I served for 6 years between 1975 and 1981. When I first separated from the Coast Guard, I did not know I was eligible for veterans benefits. In fact, I was told that I did not qualify, even though I was honorably discharged. I assumed that I was ineligible because I was a woman. At that time, many women veterans could not access services. For more than 20 years, I went without benefits. As a result, my transition experience was difficult. I was working as a commercial truck driver, doing my best to make a living, when my husband was diagnosed with cancer. I left work to be his primary caregiver. After he passed, I suffered a stroke, making it difficult for me to obtain work or remain in stable housing. I had nearly given up when I saw a flyer at a VA medical center advertising a legal clinic offered by the Homeless Persons Representation Project, or HPRP. On the day of the clinic, I arrived a full hour before the clinic opened. I thought, this is my opportunity to get the support I need, so I can't miss it. When the clinic opened, I signed up to meet with an attorney so I could secure my benefits. That meeting changed my life. I could tell the attorney really cared about me, not just about going through the motions or filling out the paperwork. Rather, the attorney went above and beyond to connect me with the services I needed, and then checked in with me regularly to make sure I was getting adequate care, that I was able to get food, and that I felt safe. I felt like I wasn't just a client. She treated me like a human being. The attorney helped me secure a veterans housing voucher from HUD so I could move into my first apartment. Then later I moved into an even nicer apartment. Housing vouchers are a pathway to realizing veterans' human rights. But for us to access vouchers, we also need legal assistance. The legal system is too complicated for lay people to navigate alone. In June, I purchased my first home through the VA Home Loan Program, and again, an attorney helped me through the home buying process. After 10 years of homelessness, it was a jubilant occasion to move into my own place.
That's wonderful, Jill, and congratulations on becoming a homeowner. John, let me turn to you. So your program, Supportive Services for Veterans Families. So you assist veterans who are either homeless or who are at risk of homelessness. Tell us about how your program identifies and works with veterans, people like Jill, to help them, obtain the housing that they need and to maintain that housing.
Thanks, John, and I appreciate Jill's comment. I particularly like, Jill, how you talked about housing as a human right. This is something that I think gets lost all too often, that we forget the central importance of this basic right for establishing all sorts of other capacities, whether it's to work, to get health care, just to function in our lives. And I know everybody on this call believes that. So let me start with sort of the headline news for us is that we are in the process of expanding SSVF offered or supported legal services around the country, thanks to funding from ARP, that's the American Rescue Plan. We are going to be sharing additional supplemental awards, $24 million with our 250 grantees. And that will allow every grantee to provide universal assessment to all program participants. Why this is so important, in addition to expanding legal services, and Debbie pointed this out quite well earlier in the previous panel, is that we know veterans are very proud, and very often it's hard for them to admit to a particular need. And I think legal services, particularly so, because their experience has been the only thing that comes with volunteering a legal problem is an arrest or seizure of assets or other really negative consequences. So they have been well trained to hide legal problems. So we need to help veterans understand that there's actually assistance available, meaningful assistance that can intervene and make a difference in their lives. And part of that is also education. Too often, when we think of legal services, the community generally thinks of, oh, well, that means intervening with a landlord so you don't get evicted, or working out some sort of arrangements on payment. But the reality is that the legal barriers to sustainable housing are far more pernicious, where we see veterans who can't even open up a bank account because of civil judgments or other legal judgments, means that if they do get paid, the pay is garnished. If they do open up a bank account is seized. So they're quickly driven into the underground economy, and that has many consequences that makes it more and more difficult for them to both establish a sustainable housing situation, but also to have some stability in their lives. So there's a broad range of interventions that are really necessary to support veterans in clearing some of these legal judgments, both civil and criminal. That might be expungements. It could also be things like working out affordable child support. We find that is a consistent problem for veterans who have children. The child support judgment may have been made many years ago when they were employed or better off shape economically. Meanwhile, they've lost jobs, they've lost income. Those payments now are not only have not been reduced, but they owe significant back payments, which both make it impossible for them to make any payment, driving them into the underground economy, and destroys the relationships with their children. So that is just one example that we see become a very significant barrier to sustainable housing and other social consequences that go along with it. So the need for legal services is profound. We can enumerate the list, although I think anyone who's looked at the challenge report knows just a few of the broad ones. And if we can start establishing that with veterans and educating them and helping them understand that there's actually a real service available to them, and we hope this is the start, this ARP funding, allowing our grantees to do a universal assessment process, either through contracts, which we expect will be the most common approach subcontracting with local legal services, legal aid, for instance, the MLPs that were also described earlier, or by hiring in-house representation, attorneys who can provide these kinds of support to veterans and their family members. So SSVF actually can serve the entire family. So if the legal issue is involving a partner or child that's in that household that's creating barriers to housing stability, the veteran is not the only one who can be served. It's the entire family. And in fact, SSVF, 20% of our participants are dependent children. So this is an opportunity to keep families together by addressing the needs of the entire household, not just the veteran. So very exciting time for SSVF grantees. I think a very exciting time for the veterans community who will see this significant expansion of legal services become available to homeless and at-risk veterans.
So I'm curious, how do they find you or you find them? How do you engage in outreach?
Well, this kind of experience, this webinar, for instance, is an important venue for us to be able to share information. So we rely on you all on this call, on our community partners. One of the great things about SSVF is actually there are very few VA staff involved in SSVF. It's a total of 18 VA staff for the entire country, and we're giving out $1 billion or over $1 billion this past year. All this money goes to community nonprofits, and they are embedded in the community. They have strong relationships with local stakeholders. We rely on them for outreach and those kinds of connections you just asked about, John, so that we can make sure that veterans, their families can find out about these resources, and of course, stakeholders like the ones on this call.
That's great. All right, Richard, let's turn to you. So I want to ask you about your work with the Veterans Advocacy Project. What kind of legal issues do you deal with, and what kind of assistance do you offer?
The Veterans Advocacy Project at Legal Aid was created to provide legal assistance to veterans experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness, income insecurity, and those living with disabilities. In addition to the general areas of law served by legal aid, landlord, tenant, child custody, home ownership, government benefits, expungement, Social Security, bankruptcy, and a lot of other non-criminal civil legal areas of law, the Veterans Project was specifically created to assist veterans apply for an appeal denials of VA benefits, so VA service-connected disability compensation, pension benefits, and discharge upgrades, as well as providing assistance to veterans experiencing homelessness apply for Social Security benefits through a rapid Social Security program called SOAR, or the SSI SSDI Outreach Access and Recovery Program. As attorneys, we have a unique ability to help veterans with that initial application for VA benefits, specifically to make strong cases up, to qualify for benefits and healthcare more quickly, and to not have to go through the arduous process of VA or even Social Security appeals. Our impact can be remarkable, and attorneys on this call have the ability to help with that. For example, through 2021, we have helped veterans receive over $87,000 in retroactive service-connected disability benefits, which has equated to over $3.6 million in estimated lifetime benefits for those veterans. In addition, since our project was established, we created a dedicated helpline for veterans. So whenever a veteran calls our Veterans Advocacy Helpline, they are connected with an attorney, a fellow, or an intern in our office who has specifically been trained in the areas of veterans law, trauma-informed advocacy, and military cultural competency.
How do you go about identifying people who are either homeless or at risk of homelessness, and what are some of the steps that you take to help them find stable housing?
Partnerships and collaborations with organizations, both governmental and nonprofit, serving the veteran population. We've been able to build a safety net of sorts of services to assist veterans in our community. For example, today is the first of our 2-day will and powers of attorney clinic that we're hosting in partnership with the Vet Center in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Additionally, through our partnership with the Veterans Multi-Service Center, an SSVF provider in Southeastern Pennsylvania, South Jersey, and Delaware, we have been able to work with 139 veterans experiencing or risk of experiencing homelessness with over 350 different legal issues. Additionally, through our partnership with the Veterans Multi-Service Center, we have been able to partner with other civil legal service providers in Pennsylvania, North Penn Legal Services and Mid Penn Legal Services, to provide needed income security advocacy through VA service connection and discharge upgrade assistance for veterans in 13 additional counties in northern and central Pennsylvania that otherwise would not have that assistance. We have been able to work with caseworkers at VMC to provide training so that they can spot legal issues and know when to send a case to us at Legal Aid. In another example, in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, through our partnership with the Montgomery County Office of Veterans Affairs, we sit on a bi-weekly call with social service providers throughout the county in order to ascertain the needs of veterans who are experiencing homelessness or risk of homelessness, who are of advanced age or who may need some other services, and how what's being done at the Office of Senior Services and what's being done at the Office of Veterans Affairs can also, what we can do at Legal Aid or what the Veterans Multi-Service Center or any of these other social service providers can assist with. Additionally, we've provided trainings to VA social workers, both at the Philadelphia and the Coatesville VA medical centers in areas such as landlord-tenant and expungements, so that they can, again, spot those legal issues, know when to send a case to Legal Aid. And then we also host monthly clinics at the Coatesville VA Medical Center with one of our attorneys. It's completely inconceivable that we would have been able to advocate for the veterans we have to date without these partnerships and without the buy-in of the veteran community in southeastern Pennsylvania. And I would like to just quickly talk about one of my clients. His name, obviously, name changed for purposes of privacy. His name is Billy, and to talk about how we as attorneys and partners have been able to work together to help him. So Billy served in the Marine Corps. He was on the verge of homelessness as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. He lost his job. He was within like 3 days of the sheriff coming and forcibly removing him from his home. Billy had applied for unemployment. He hadn't heard from them. It was clear that he should have been receiving benefits. He reached out to the Veterans Multi-Service Center for homelessness assistance. VMC was able to refer him to us. And so because of his referral to us, VMC was doing what they needed to do through SSVF to get him the supportive services that he and his family needed. So I was able to reach out to the unemployment office, find out what was going on. We were able to work with the sheriff's office to make sure that he wasn't going to be forcibly removed on a certain day, and make sure that he had the ability to stay a little longer to pay off what he needed to pay off. And within a week, Billy got the check that he needed to the unemployment office. He got a little over $2,000 in his unpaid benefits. Additionally, I'm currently working with Billy to apply for and appeal denials of service-connected disability compensation for injuries sustained while in service. Still more, Billy has worked with one of our expungement attorneys to talk about the process of filing an expungement for previous criminal records, which has been hindering employment prospects. And as a side note, just because I was talking about unemployment, for veterans who are referred to us by the Veterans Multi-Service Center throughout 2020 and 2021, so veterans who are unemployed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to get almost $50,000 in retroactive unemployment benefits, and additionally weekly or biweekly benefits for individuals who had become unemployed as a result of the pandemic, providing essential income during this time, allowing them to stay in their home, to stay housed, or if they had become homeless, to have that income to be able to, when they became housed, to stay housed.
That's terrific. Thank you for that. Jill, let's get back to you. So obviously you were somebody who was in need of these services and you know, at times lacked the information or the assistance that you needed. From your perspective, what more you think legal aid providers, the Veterans Affairs, other organizations that serve veterans, what more should they be doing to help veterans with the homelessness problem?
First, have a genuine interest in helping the veteran. and understanding that we have issues that the general population may or may not have. One thing I found very frustrating is when I sought assistance, those that were supposed to assist were more interested in getting my personal information than assisting me and sending me on to agency number two, knowing agency number two wouldn't help, and then sending me to agency number three, making me feel like a dog chasing my tail. So, I even tried SSVF and got no assistance from the SSVF here. So we need people who are genuinely concerned, who genuinely care about helping veterans, and who are knowledgeable so that we can receive the assistance that we need. Because a veteran should never be told, I don't know what to tell you, talk to someone else. That's what we need.
I'm sure that John is sorry to hear about the problem you had with the SSVF. I'm curious. So you point out quite correctly that obviously veterans have particular needs, and it's not always easy to understand what a veteran has gone through. Do most of the organizations that you deal with that you find effective, do they have veterans on staff who sort of understand these needs, or is that something that's lacking that perhaps ought to be changed?
Usually, when you find information, when you learn information that you need to know, you learn it from another veteran. You don't learn it from the VA. Unless you're specifically speaking to a VA employee who is a veteran. In my experience, it seemed that the VA employees didn't try to learn the information that they could pass on to us.
It's very valuable input, Jill. I appreciate your perspective. John Richard, I want to kind of ask you, and whichever one of you wants to go first, you can choose. Kind of the same question about hearing all of this from your experience. What more do you think, or maybe doing things differently, that the VA, your organizations, other organizations that serve veterans, what more could they be doing to better serve the needs of veterans who are either homeless or at risk of homelessness? John, why don't we start with you, and then Richard, you can offer your thoughts.
I think the most important thing we have to do is look at the data and listen to the people who are using our services. So, for instance, what Jill had to share about the lack of capacity, I guess, of the local SSVF grantee to meet her needs. And one of the things we learned, and one of the reasons why we're expanding these legal services, is roughly only a quarter of our SSVF grantees have the capacity to provide direct legal services. By and large, it was done by referral. And unfortunately, a referral to legal aid, which is already overwhelmed, is not going to be prioritized if the needs compared to other needs that legal aid is faced with and client requests are just not going to meet the standard we want for responsiveness and care. So it was important for us to get additional money into the field so we could get every VA SSVF grantee providing these services, not just 25%. And we learned that by listening to people like Jill, by surveying our clients, and by looking at our data. And we have to do that regularly and continuously to make sure that the service delivers if we were in Jill's shoes.
I think that a lot of the times we understand that the veteran is our client, but understand that families are a part of the advocacy and the delivery ecosystem as well. A lot more times that we need to do outreach to spouses, to children. The number of times that I've talked with someone who said, just talk to my wife. She knows everything that's going on. She's told me what to do. She's told me that I'm supposed to call you. So reaching out to the people who are sometimes pushing the veteran toward doing what needs to get done. And another thing is, one thing that we do here at Legal Aid, when we're trying to ascertain whether or not an individual is a veteran, to the best of our ability, sometimes we don't use the word veteran because we talk about an individual who served in the military. Because some people don't consider themselves veterans, even if they did serve in the military. When we talk about who is a veteran, the term veteran has a very specific statutory definition under the U.S. Code, and that's what the VA uses when they're determining whether or not an individual qualifies for services. So when we have individuals who come to us with less than honorable discharges, so the OTH that was talked about in the previous panel, or even the bad conduct discharge, an individual who really should be considered a veteran, and the reason for their less than honorable discharge is a mental health condition that was not considered as a mitigating factor at the time of discharge. These are still veterans, but a lot of times they're not taken into account when we talk about the veteran population, unless they're somehow getting some kind of benefit from VA. So really working in who is a veteran, how we can make sure that we're collecting those numbers correctly. And then at the same time, when we're talking about definitions, who is experiencing homelessness? So a lot of the times when you're talking about someone who is experiencing homelessness, I mean, I think it's anyone who doesn't have a regular night place to sleep at night. But someone who's couch surfing is not technically homeless. And that person doesn't necessarily always have the ability to gain the same benefits that someone who is literally homeless, someone who is street homeless. So a lot of the times, even though they don't have an actual address, they're staying with a cousin, they're staying with their mother, that person should still be considered as experiencing homelessness and should still have the ability to get a lot of the benefits that they otherwise aren't getting just because they're not literally homeless under our definitions.
You say, by the way, that you work with the whole family. So does that present its own set of challenges? You know, you're trying to attend to all of their needs and their reactions to the veteran, and you know, certain issues that might cause interfamily conflicts.
I mean, a lot of the times it's figuring out when you're talking with someone, does it make sense to include spouse in a conversation? Because sometimes spouse doesn't know everything that's going on or has gone on with the veteran. But sometimes I've seen, especially in cases where, like I'm working with a veteran through like a service-connected claim, I'm trying to understand the current symptomology of what's going on. I ask what's going on, and they're like, oh, you know, this is happening, and like sometimes I can't sleep. And then I talk to the spouse, and the spouse is like, no, you're thrashing around all night. You like barely get any sleep. This is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And so sometimes that's really beneficial. And then other times it's like, maybe it's easier just to talk to the veteran alone. And most of the time, that's, as attorneys, to keep confidentiality, that's what we do. But a lot of times having two people, spouses, family members, whoever it is, because everyone wants to help the veteran in the family for the most part. So the more people that we can have to advocate for the individual, the better it's going to be.
Whoever wants to jump in the few minutes that we have left. So you've got a lot of people who are listening or who may be watching later recordings of this presentation, and you know, so many of them will want to help veterans who are experiencing homelessness in their communities. What suggestions would you give to anybody who's listening about things that they could do to be helpful?
Well, I guess we could start off with the outreach number. Everyone should be aware that the VA has a 24-hour hotline which can be used to link to services. It's manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 877-424-3838. More time, 877-424-3838. So if sometimes it's not just the veteran making that phone call, it's a family member who's concerned about the veteran, a friend who wants to provide some connection, all those people in that community who are aware, are connected to other veterans, can really make an impact simply by helping that veteran take that first step.
If you are the family member of a veteran, or if you are a veteran, even if you don't think that you're going to qualify for something, please reach out to someone, whether it's us here at Legal Aid, whether it's or your local legal aid. Please don't call us from California. We can't provide too much assistance, but reach to your local legal aid, reach out to your, or reach out to your local county or state office of Veterans Affairs. For the most part, there might be something available for you to assist you with whatever's going on. Even if it's a referral to a legal aid for something that you didn't even think was a legal issue. The number of times that people come to us and, like, for example, I was talking about unemployment previously. A lot of people didn't think, oh, I should reach out to a lawyer because I haven't heard from the unemployment office in 4 months. And we had, during the pandemic, we had the opportunity to reach out to the service centers here in Pennsylvania and get some assistance pretty quickly. So reaching out to people, because at the end of the day, if you don't ask for the assistance, you're not going to be able to get it. So we're here, we're happy to help, at least talk you through something. So just reach out to people.
Jill, I'm just curious, do you have any thoughts about what any listeners of this program who are in the communities who may want to help, either by having volunteer opportunities or serving as advocates themselves, or just in terms of their interactions with homeless veterans? What advice would you give to people listening about things that they can do to help make this situation better?
Listen, try to understand. Don't assume that homeless people are homeless because we are physically irresponsible or otherwise irresponsible. There are many things that can bring you to homelessness: loss of a job, illness, layoff, several things. And be willing to reach out. Just don't walk past. Reach out to someone. Let them know that you're there for them and willing to assist them. My feeling was that I couldn't go to an attorney because attorneys were only for people of means. I felt I couldn't afford an attorney. So after a period of time, I became frustrated and just felt like giving up until I saw the flyer about Homeless Persons Representation Project. Understand that there is a great deal of need in the community wherever you are. Some people may be too ashamed to reach out. I was one of those people. I was too ashamed to reach out. Let people know you are there for them. Even if you can't find the answers, you can't find the solutions, say, hey, I'm here for you. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to sit with you. Whether you're willing to talk, or you just need me to just sit with you and be quiet.
Well, thank you all very much. I want to thank you, first of all, not only for joining this program today, but for obviously everything that you do to help with this very serious problem. And Jill, best of luck with your new home. And I want to also thank you for your service to our country. And with that, I think we are fortunate in that Representative Scanlon is going to rejoin the conversation, has some remarks and perhaps a question or two herself. So Representative Scanlon, back over to you.
Thank you. And I just wondered if our legal services providers could speak a little bit to the SOAR program. I think in Philadelphia, we've seen some nice integration between the SOAR program, which provides access to Social Security disability benefits, but can also be helpful to veterans or veterans' families. Richard, are you able to speak to that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. In Philly, it's been absolutely amazing. I actually used to work with the Homeless Advocacy Project. The SOAR program there is incredible. We just started doing SOAR here at Blade within the past year. So we haven't yet had as great of an experience just because it's so new. But yeah, SOAR has the ability to take a 9-month process that can be an initial application for Social Security and bring it to 3 months. So when you have an individual who's experiencing homelessness and living with severe disabilities that they have the inability to obtain work, having the ability to get income quickly will allow for a lot, will allow for housing stability and more from that. So we have that really awesome ability to help with both SSI and SSD.
Yeah, I mean, we found it to be such a help with the work that the lawyers I was working with in Philadelphia were doing with the Homeless Advocacy Project, as you mentioned, to really fast track these disability applications. But it requires some specialized training in order to implement, doesn't it?
Yeah, so there's a training through the SOAR program. SOAR is its own program. There is a training that you have to go through to become certified in SOAR. It's a long process to get the certification, but I actually really appreciate it. I've done Social Security before, but going through that SOAR program, it's like you really understand this is why we really need this information. This is why SOAR is set up the way it is, because we're really helping the Social Security office get all of the information at the front end. So we're submitting all of the medical evidence. We're submitting a lot of this information for them so that it's easier for them to give a positive decision for a client a lot quicker.
Well, and I think that really speaks to the value of legal services because you have the expertise, you're able to help put those packages together so we can get it through the federal agencies or the state agencies and give people the benefits that we've already determined they should have. So it's a great program, and I know pro bono lawyers like participating in it too when they've been able to. So if anyone on the line has suggestions on how we can make that easier to get out there, if we need more grants to help do it, or I know LASP just got a grant to work on pro bono programs throughout the county. So I'm really, really looking forward to working with them to try to expand the reach of legal services beyond the metropolitan region. So that'll be a great project for the year ahead. So
Yes, we're
thank
very
you.
excited.
And thank you for having me on today. It's always great to connect with this crowd because people are doing such great work.